Okay.
Welcome everyone to the United Church of Tullahoma, and thank you for joining us today, February the 12th, 2023, on Zoom, on YouTube, or in person. Meg, would you like the chalice? In times of cold, we seek the warming fire. In times of darkness, we stumble toward the tiny flame. In times of cold, we seek the warming fire. In times of repression, we reach for the lamp of truth. In times of loss, we pray for the comforting light. In times of joy, we light a candle of celebration. Spirit of life, as we kindle this light, help us find what we need this day. Okay, anybody have announcements? Jim.
Yes, I have a few here. The P-Flag meeting is scheduled for tomorrow evening, the second Monday of the month. I think it's at 6 o'clock, not 100% sure about the time. But that's been changed from the second Tuesday to the second Monday. We will have a board meeting after service next week, the third Sunday of the month. And we are still looking for another service leader. Right now I'm doing 2 Sundays a month, the first and the fourth. And it'd really be great to have one more person step up and take either the first or the fourth Sunday of the month. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else? On Thursday, the Rethink group will meet on Zoom at 7 p.m. Okay, going once, going twice, gone. If you would like to donate to our church, please make a check payable to the United Church of Tullahoma and send to our treasurer, Costa Bryce, P.O. Box 331, Tullahoma 37388, or drop it in the shaker box in the back there. Okay, our responsive reading is not responsive this morning. Love can transform the world. Love is aspiration, the spirit that moves and inspires this faith we share. Rightly understood, love can nurture our spirits and transform the world. May the flame of this chalice honor and embody the power and the blessings of the love we need, the love we give, the love we are challenged always to remember and share. And I forgot to say that was in honor of Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day. And this morning we are blessed to have Rabbi Rami Shapiro, and the title of his talk is Seeking for That Which Cannot Be Lost. Sounds great.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sometimes the title is the best thing, and then it's downhill from there. But I do like the title, Seeking for That Which Cannot Be Lost. The idea is we make religion or spirituality into hard work. It's like Peloton. You ever see those commercials for Peloton? You gotta just stick with it, and then they got the person on the video screen, come on, keep going, keep going. They're exhausting, those commercials. And I watch them on my Lazy Boy recliner. And the only work I do there is just push the button and it goes up and it goes down. And I'm exhausted just doing that. But we think of religion or spirituality as hard work. And it's not. But it gives us a sense of accomplishment when we think that way. Let me give you an idea of what I have in mind. I'm in my 70s, but I started the spiritual quest, and there's a problem with the word quest right away, when I was 16. And the quest was for enlightenment. I was born Jewish, but I went on a Buddhist quest, and the quest was for enlightenment. And I studied Buddhism both in high school from books, and then I had a Buddhist teacher and a Zen master, and I sat Zazen, Zen meditation every day, and I did it for 10 years under guidance of different Zen teachers, and I was very serious about it. And then after 10 years of practice, I called one of my teachers on the phone. I was living in Miami, Florida. The teacher was in Northampton, Massachusetts. And I called him up and I said, I've been doing this for 10 years and I'm not getting anywhere. And he said, oh, you ought to come up and see me. So Northampton, Massachusetts is 45 minutes away from where my parents lived, and I flew up and I got to see my family, and I went to see him for lunch, and we had lunch, and he didn't want to talk to me about my issue. We had lunch, we just caught up with each other, and then we went and we sat in this Japanese garden, Zen garden, that was actually created in his honor. And we were sitting on this bench, and he said, all right, so what's the deal? And I said, I've been practicing strict Zen practice for 10 years, daily, sitting every day, and I'm getting nowhere. And he says, okay, the reason you're having a problem is it doesn't work. I said, what do you mean it doesn't work? You told me this is what you're supposed to do. And he goes, yeah, that's because that's what you needed to hear, but it doesn't work. And to make a long story short, the reason it doesn't work is because there's no work to do. But I needed to think that there was work to do, because I was in that stage of my life when I had to really work at it. And many of us are. And religions are still focused on the notion there's something we have to do in order to get the prize that we seek. Does that make sense? You follow that idea? And religions hold out a prize. So the prize could be heaven, the prize could be enlightenment, the prize can be eternal life, either in this world or in a world to come. But there's always a prize, and the prize has to be earned. You have to do something or believe something to get the prize. And not everybody gets it, except maybe in Hinduism. Hinduism is probably the most optimistic of the world's religions, in the sense that eventually everybody gets reborn enough. You get reborn enough times that eventually you're reborn, and this time around you get it. And you figure it out, and you get enlightened, and you get the prize. But in most religions, they don't give you infinite number of chances. You get X number of times around, like in Christianity, you get one shot, and if you don't accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, according to whatever denomination you're working in, well, sorry, you go to hell, and that's the end of it. I got a letter, an email, not an actual letter, I got an email asking me, I write for Spirituality Health magazine, I do a Q&A spiritual advice column. Someone sent me the question, she said, I love your magazine, I like your open-mindedness, but what I don't understand is, why aren't you scared of God and going to hell? Because my opinions aren't her opinions, so I must be going to hell. And I said, no, I'm not afraid of God and going to hell. I'm afraid of people who believe in a God that's going to send me to hell. And I said, what, in my email response, I said, what do you get out of believing in a God that will send people who disagree with you to hell? I mean, that's an interesting question, much more interesting than why God sends people to hell, which I think is just a fantasy. But why do you want to believe in that? And you want to believe in that because it makes the prize all the more precious. If everybody wins, But if most people go to hell, except for me, and the people I like, well, then it's a real big prize. But what if there's no work to be done? What if the prize is just there? So I mentioned a story to you last time I was here in the conversation at the end. But we didn't really go into the story. I just sort of threw it out there. I want to tell you the story again and then unpack it a little bit more as a way of moving more deeply into this idea that there's no work to do and you've already won. Me. All right, we'll see. So the story comes from Franz Kafka. So Franz Kafka is a writer of, I don't know what you want to say, bizarro fiction. It's hard to know, especially now some new translations of Kafka are coming out. The translations that we have are translations of edited work of of Kafka's work that's been edited by his friend Max Brod, who really wanted us to love Kafka, so he remade Kafka in his own image. And we don't know exactly what Kafka was about, but let's just take this story at face value. So it's a parable, and it's a story about a guy who's searching for the truth. I'm going to simplify it because it's a longer parable than we have time for. But it's about a guy who's searching for the truth. And he's going everywhere in search of truth. And finally he finds the gateway to truth with a capital T. And he knows this without a shadow of a doubt. And there's a literal gate. And all he has to do is go through the gate. But the gate is guarded by this huge, soldier. And he knows he can't defeat the soldier. And so he goes up to the guard and he says, I need your permission. Give me permission to enter the gate. And the guard says, I can't do that. And he says to the guard, what do I have to do to get your permission? The guard says, I can't tell you that. So he starts to sort of sets up camp outside the gate to the truth and begins to ponder what he can do to convince the guard to let him in. And he goes through comes up with all these ideas, and he tries all these different schemes to get through. And years and years and years go by. And over that time, he's actually built himself a structure, a little house, and he just lives outside the gate. And he's trying everything. And everything he tries, the guard accepts, but never gives him permission. And he impoverishes himself. He gives him all his money, he gives him all his possession, he's got nothing. He's just living in this little hut in front of the gate, and he's an old man, and he's on his deathbed. And he still hasn't gained entrance to the truth. And now he can't even go to the gate and ask the guard anymore. So he summons the guard over to him. And he says to the guard, I've been here my entire life. Why is it that no one else has come by? How could it be that I am the only one who found the gateway to truth? And the guard says, oh, you don't understand. You found your gateway to truth. Everyone has their own gate. You found your gate. And the guy says, and what did I have to do to get by you and enter into the truth? What did I have to give you? He says, no, you didn't understand. I wasn't here to keep you out. I was here to keep the gate open. All you had to do was walk in. You spent your life trying to bribe me to let you in. I couldn't let you in because it wasn't closed to you. All you had to do was walk in, but you didn't. And now you're going to die, and the gate will close. That's the end of the story. The story is a parable for each of us. We're all encamped outside the gate to truth. And there's something that's keeping us from entering the gate. Now, it doesn't have to be a burly guard, right? It could be some idea that we have. We're not worthy yet. We need to, find the right seminar. We need to find the right guru. We need to read the right book. That's my problem. There's always one more book I need to get and read. I don't care about the seminars. Since I teach so many of them myself, I know they're all bogus. So I don't put trust in the seminars or the teachers. But I figure there's another, even though I've written 36 books myself, I think someone's written the book, and I have to find the book. So there's something that you need, that you think you're missing. Some action, some belief, some something. And when you get it, then you'll have earned the right to enter the gate. But what if there's nothing you need? What if all you ever had to do was just go into the gate? And we didn't do it. We create these systems we create these spiritual systems or religious systems. It's all, in this context, there's no real difference. We create these systems that we think are designed to let us into truth, to gain entry to truth, capital T, but are in fact distractions from actually entering the truth. What if there was nothing to do? What if it was right here, just this, and just you as you are? Why can't we accept that? And maybe you have. So maybe I'm just, I can't afford therapy, so I do this instead. Why can't I accept that? Why can't I accept that? So one of the people I've been reading lately, because I know there's a book out there somewhere, Leonard Cohen was, I love Leonard Cohen, both as an artist, but when I was, I guess a senior in college, maybe a junior, I'm not sure, I don't remember how old you are, 18, 19 in college. Leonard Cohen was one of my Zen teachers, because he was very involved with Zen. He was, the Japanese term was jikijitsu. He was the senior monk at some meditation retreats that I did with Joshu Suzaki Roshi, and Leonard's Japanese Buddhist name was Jikan, means silence. Anyway, Leonard Cohen was instrumental in my Zen training. And at some point, he went to India while he was a Zen monk at Mount Baldy in outside Los Angeles. He went to India and he discovered this guy, Ramesh Balkazar. Ramesh Balkazar used to be the head of the Bank of India, I think. And Ramesh Balkazar was also a deeply spiritual individual, or I don't know if he would describe himself that way, but anyway, he was in the lineage of another Indian mystic, let's say, named Nisargadatta Maharaj, who was in the lineage of yet another one called Ramana Maharshi. And all of these guys, Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj, and I only share their names because I love to impress you, how I can have them roll off my tongue. I worked very hard to learn how to say Nisargadatta Maharaj. So, but all these guys, try again, Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta Maharaj, and Ramesh Balkazar, all of them are in this, what's called the Advaita lineage, the non-dual lineage, that everything is consciousness. You're it. There's nothing to do, there's nowhere to go, there's nothing to know except the truth of this moment, which is, and then you can find your favorite language for it, it's all God, it's all reality, it's all, whatever it is, it's that which we seek, already present, because there's nothing else but it. Is that, you follow that? There's nothing else. All the theories we create are distractions from the reality that this is it. There is nothing else. And this idea is hidden in various traditions. In the book of Deuteronomy, I think it's chapter 5, verse 34, but don't hold me to it. But in the book of Deuteronomy, somewhere, there's a line in the Hebrew that says, Ein od milvado. Literally, ein means nothing, od means else, so it's like nothing else, milvado, but, sort of like him, but it's like nothing else but God. And in the standard reading of the text, meaning it's like the Islamic la ilaha illallah, there's no God but God. And in the conventional reading of ein od milvado, or la ilaha illallah, they mean our God is the only God. Na 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 na, like that. But in the mystic reading of both texts, it means something very different. Ein od milvado means there's nothing beside God at all. There's nothing else but God, which is the way the Sufis read la ilaha illallah. There's nothing but Allah. Everything is Allah. You and me and the machinery we're using and the podium that I'm standing next to, everything is Allah. Ein od milvado, there's nothing besides God. Everything is God. You find in every religion this message hidden, buried somewhere in it. But mostly we either ignore it or interpret it in a way that keeps us from hearing the mystic reading of it. so that we can live in this dualistic mindset where I'm here and you're there and God is somewhere else. And as long as God or reality or truth is somewhere else, as long as I've got to get permission to get to it, either by joining the right religion or taking the right course or having the right guru or believing in the right idea, as long as I have to have something that I don't have now to get me there, I'm not going to, I'm just going to be, I'm never going to get it because I've told myself that I can't get it. But what if there's nothing to get? What if you're it? Then what do?
Feel relieved. What a relief.
So take that. So Meg says, I said, what do you do? So Meg says, you feel relieved. So let's go into that. You feel relieved on a number of different levels. And now I'm speaking for you. You can either agree or disagree. But let's take physical first. On the physical level, what does that relief feel like? I'm not going to put you on the spot, but for me, there's a tension that attends the spiritual work or the religious dimension. A tension that, okay, I got to pray the right way, I've got to sit the right way, I've got to, there's the whole notion of not having it, not being worthy creates a physical tension that when I know you're it, the tension dissipates. There's a deep relaxation that accompanies knowing that you're it. Can you follow that? Because there's nothing to worry about. Well, I got ahead of myself. There's no defensiveness on the physical level because you're it. There's also an expansiveness about us when you know you're it. When I was in, I think, 5th grade, 6th grade maybe, there was this guy in my class who was this bully, and he used to pick on me, and he would punch me. And one day, and I was a big kid, not strong or anything, just fat. I was just a big guy, and he was very small, but very muscular. And one day he backed me against a wall, and he starts just flailing away, punching my stomach. But I was big, and he was completely ineffective. And I remember looking down at him, and he's just pounding, and it's like pounding a bag, like in a boxing gym. And he's just pounding away, and you can see he's exerting himself and getting tired. But it's a total waste of time because I'm just too big. And I'm looking down at him and saying, what are you doing? And he looks up and goes, I don't know. And he just walks away. And that was the last time he did that. So it's like, when you realize who you are, there's a huge, and who you are being the absolute, being the whole thing, being the universe. When you realize who you are, there's a hugeness to you that allows you to operate without defenses, in a sense. Because if you're the whole, you really can't be, I don't know. I mean, all language fails when you talk about this stuff. So any word that comes to mind, I'm already rethinking it. But it allows you not to be, it doesn't allow you to be defeated, because there's nothing bigger than you, if that makes sense. In 12-step, I'm not going to ask, how many of you are anonymous? I'm not going to do that. But in 12-step recovery things, when I go to meetings, most of the people talk about their higher power, which I hate. I hate the language of a higher power. That to me is very dualistic. I'm down here, the higher power is up there, and I gotta surrender to the higher power. And I can't do any of that. And if any of you have read my books on 12-step, I hate this kind of talk. I'm not the only one who hates it. Bill W., the guy who started Alcoholics Anonymous, he didn't use that terminology. That's a Christian I don't know, I was going to say infestation, that's a little judgmental, but that's a Christian interpretation of what Bill W. said. He didn't speak about higher power, he spoke about greater power. What we're talking about is recognizing that you are an expression of an infinitely greater power. Not higher, but greater. You're huge. You're a wave of this infinite ocean, is one of the Hindu metaphors that I like. And you can't beat the ocean. And when you recognize your, not just the wave part of you, but when you recognize your oceanic self, there is this physical release that comes. Emotionally, it's the same. It doesn't mean you're happy all the time. It means that whatever emotions happen, you just allow them to happen because you're too big to worry about any one emotion being constant. You just recognize things just flow. You're the ocean, you have all the emotions. And there's no need to worry about any of them because you have them all. And they just come and they go and they come back and then they go again. There's a freedom to feel anything you feel when you realize you're it. You're the oceanic, and there's nothing you lack. And lacking nothing means you have it all, so a lot of it is going to be pain as well as joy, positive as well as negative, all of that. In the Chinese Taoist tradition of and in the practice of Qigong, there's a wonderful posture that you take called monk begging for rice, where you take this posture, I'm doing it in an awkward way, but your hands are held up like this, and it's called monk begging for rice. And the idea is you're open to the Taoists call the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows of everyday living, and you're just going to get it all. Again, in the Bible, Moses talks about getting. Behold, I place before you birthing and dying, blessing and cursing. Choose life that you may live. But when you live, you're going to get birthing and dying and blessing and cursing. Most people read the text as you can have birth or you can have death, you can have blessing, you can have curse. Choose half. You can't do that. That's not the way it works. You're the whole thing. Know that you're the whole thing, and you can work your way, and you'll simply be open to and at one with whatever happens without having to defend yourself against one side or the other. So physically there's a release, emotionally there's a release and a relief. Intellectually the same thing, there's no ideas you have to be afraid of. On the fourth level in Judaism, it's body, heart, mind, soul. So on the soul level, the level of interconnection, when you realize you're the whole thing, you realize that everybody is a part of the same thing. So there's this innate feeling of unity that doesn't erase the diversity. So that each one of us, and everything else for that matter, but each one of us can manifest in an absolutely unique way and yet not be other than the oceanic whole. Each wave is unique and distinct, but no wave is other than the ocean. And then the fifth level in Judaism, in the English, you could say spirit, but the Hebrew is more evocative, and the Hebrew is yechida, which means non-dual. So in that non-dual dimension, that's where everything disappears. That's when it's just the oceanic. So you go from the surface where you have all the waves, and you see all the waves are interconnected. That's the fourth level, the fourth dimension. But then you go beneath the surface, and there's no waves, and it's just the ocean. That's that fifth level, yechida consciousness, where you're gone, and it's just this one thing, but you're not even aware of it. And there too, that, if you think that's the ultimate thing, then you've taken the first four and you've discounted those. What you really get is all five, and there's a release and a relief that comes with this full-bodied, five-dimension awakening. That is yours right now, and there's nothing you have to do to get it. Now, I don't know if this is making any sense whatsoever, especially because most of us have been raised in a tradition that tells us we don't have it yet. But when Leonard Cohen goes to India, see, I didn't throw that out for no reason, I'm coming back to it. When Leonard Cohen went to India and met Ramesh Balthazar, who is in the tradition of Anybody want to take a stab at it? Ramana Maharshi in Nisargadatta Maharaj. When he was in that, when he was exposed to that tradition says, you're it. It's all consciousness. You already have it. The only thing that's blocking you is the thought that you don't have it. That's the problem. But then, because these guys don't write books, they write, well, Ramesh does. Mostly someone transcribes their conversations with people. And in their conversations with people, they'll even say, but even the thought that you don't have it is part of it. So even if you're saying, no, I'm stuck on that thought, they'll say, well, who's stuck? The person who's stuck and the sense of being stuck is also part of the infinite consciousness. You can't get away from being the whole. You can't get away from the oceanic, even if you insist you're not the oceanic. Even the denial of the oceanic is the oceanic. And they'll push this idea until your insistence on being blocked is shattered. And they simply do it through dialogue. They're not telling you to chant, they're not telling you to pray, they're not telling you to try to bribe the guard at the gate. They're just telling you to look. And once you really look, you'll see what really is. And what really is this. The oceanic happening in, with, and as everything. So, I'm going to take this one step further in the few minutes we have left, and then we'll try to unpack it a little bit later. If I wasn't as brilliantly clear as I think I am. So let's say this is true, just for the argument's sake. There is a Zen koan. So, Zen koans are these puzzles that Zen masters give you to crack your mind open. And there's a Zen koan about an ox. And an ox is in a corral. And the gate is open, and it's a big gate. And the ox is walking through the gate. And the head of the ox goes through the gate, and the shoulders of the ox goes through the gate, and the body of the ox goes through the gate, and the hindquarters of the ox goes through the gate, and then the tail of the ox gets stuck. And the ox can't exit completely. And the question at the end of the koan is, where is the tail stuck? So this was put to a group of us who were studying Buddhism by the same teacher who I went to visit, who told me meditation doesn't work. And he said, so where is the tail stuck? So we're sitting around and people coming up with all kinds of things. Well, there was a nail on the gate and the flicking tail got stuck on the nail and he couldn't, the ox couldn't get through, and they're coming up with all kinds of things, and they're all wrong, of course. So finally we exhausted all of our clever answers. And so you said, so where is the tail stuck? And he says, the tail is stuck in the story. That's the only place the tail is stuck. I told you a story about an ox going through the gate, and I told you the ox got stuck. That's where it's stuck, in the story. You buy the story, and you have a stuck ox. You don't buy the story, and there's no stuck ox. I'm telling you a story that you're damned if you don't accept X. Yeah. So where are you damned? In the story. Or I'm telling you get eternal salvation if you do get X. Well, where do you get that? In the story. He says if you don't buy the story, none of the reward or punishment exists. It's all in the story. Which is why he said Zazen doesn't work. Meditation doesn't work. Because what it's supposed to do is only necessary in the story. And the story is only of value as long as the story perpetuates the idea that you need to do something. Once you get rid of the story, there's nothing to do. But once you get rid of the story, you're going to have to say, oh, I don't know if wasted is the right word, but I wasted 10 years of my life sitting cross-legged on a cushion. Can I do that? Can I admit that to myself? Or is that even necessary? Now he would say, because we had this conversation, he would say, you don't even have to admit that. You spend 10 years of your life on a cushion. Okay, you did that. And now you don't do that. What difference does it make? You were in one story, and now you're not in that story. Maybe you're in another story, or maybe you don't have a story, or maybe now your story is you don't have a story. Can you live without a story? Is that even possible, or is that just another story? Can you really know that this is it? Now, the theory is, and you'd have to test it out for yourself, the theory is you can, but there's no method to it. In the Ramana Maharshi lineage, one of the things they talk about is not a method. I don't think you call it a method, but maybe. I don't think it's a method. It's called, but you can speak of it as neti neti, which is Sanskrit for not this, not that. Which means every time you come up with an idea, you have to say to yourself, no, that's not right. You just keep emptying out what you come up with until you end up with nothing. In other words, no more story, no more guard at the gate, no more notion that you don't have it. You just every time something comes up that says that separates you from the reality of who you really are, you simply say, no, let that go. And when you let that go, the truth is there for a second. Then another story comes in, and you say, no, neti, neti, not that, not that. And then the truth comes in. Because it's human nature to continually come to take refuge in a story. And you have to continually empty out that story. So I'm going to end with probably something I've told you before, but it's another story. I went to visit Father Thomas Keating, who was one of my beloved teachers. I used to visit him at least once, if not twice a year, starting in 1984. But I went to see him when he was in his last months of life. And my goal to see, I went to see him specifically to tell him I loved him and that to thank him for everything he's done for me in all the years that he's taught me, and just to thank him for all of them. And I did that, and then we were just sitting in his monastery in Snowmass, Colorado, and I said to myself, well, here's an opportunity. I've never been with any of my teachers who were dying before. Let me see if I can get some scoop on the dying thing from a great, who I thought was a great spiritual teacher. So I said, how are you living this dying thing? And he said, I'm living my dying the way I live my life. And he's sitting in a wheelchair, and Father Thomas is very tall, and he wears a wool cassock, and he's sitting in his chair, and he puts his hands in his lap like this, and he raises his hands up, and he says, this is how I live my life. Every time Thomas came up, I let Thomas go, and he drops his hands into his lap. Every time Thomas comes up, I let Thomas go, and he just does this over and over again. Thomas comes up, I let Thomas go. And he says, when I die, Thomas will come up, and I'll let Thomas go, and Thomas won't come back up. So I thought that was pretty cool. But then I said to myself, I don't know, he's Catholic. Doesn't he go somewhere? I mean, he spent his whole life since he was 16 in the monastery. He didn't go into the monastery, and they said, oh yeah, up and let go. That's not Catholicism. I said, okay, but where does Thomas go? And he looks at me like, you idiot. He says, no, look, Thomas comes up, I let Thomas go, Thomas does the whole thing again. And he goes, Thomas comes up, I let Thomas go, and Thomas doesn't come back. And I said, yeah, I know, where does Thomas go? He goes, Thomas doesn't go anywhere. Thomas is everywhere. And that was the end of our conversation. What he said about Thomas, Ramana Maharshi says about all of us, and I think it's true. That's my story. And there's nothing that we can do to get us to that point because we're already at that point. There's just a realization of who we really are. And then when Thomas comes up, when Meg comes up, when Rami comes up, when Tom comes up, we can, in my estimation, my sense is, we can go, oh, how interesting, and then let it go. Knowing it's going to come back and go, oh, interesting, let's see what's happening there, and then let it go. And then at some point it won't come back. But you won't be there to say it's interesting, because you'll just be the whole thing, which is what you already are. Religion won't tell us that. Spirituality won't tell us that. No one needs to tell us that, because we already know it. All we have to do is, if even this, and maybe not, is walk through the gate of knowing that which we already know. All right, well, I hope that made some sense. Luckily, we can sit in a circle a little bit later and we can unpack it if it didn't make any sense. But thank you.
Thank you.
Oop, carry your phone.
I live. So let's end today with our song 414 and the hymnal.
Stand.
Yeah, stand as you are willing and able. Thank you. As we leave this
friendly place, love give light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return.
and let's take about a